At this time, I'd like to recognize another veteran, another friend of mine from Georgia, Mr. Collins, for as much time as he may consume.
Well, I appreciate the gentleman from Florida yielding. This is an important debate, and I know with many decisions that you have in Florida and other things going on, what it amazes me is it was just stated that I am not sure what the president's goal is here. The reason I believe that most of us believe that Iran even decided to negotiate was the fact that sanctions worked, that they were struggling under those sanctions, that they were having to deal with the reality that the world did not want them to have nuclear capability. And I'm telling you at this point, what is disturbing to me is I am tired of this administration, this president, trying to earn accolades of the world on the back of Israel. They cannot continue to do that. Israel is the one that is suffering here. Israel will be the one that is at the point or the tip of the spear. And for those of us who have served, we know that. We know that Iran, as my friend from Florida stated earlier, Iran was behind and is behind most of the terrorism in the world, many times in the world today. But yet this administration turns a blind eye because they believe under the cloak of diplomacy that Iran will come to the table. It was not that Iran came to the table under the cloak of diplomacy. Iran came to the table because they were suffering, because sanctions were working. So last week, the president gave an interview discussing the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The deal struck by Iran and the P5+1 nations over Iran's nuclear program. More than a few things the president said during the course of the interview raised some red flags for me and should raise some uneasiness among the American people. The first item of concern is the inability of the part of the administration to get a concession from Iran to cease its uranium enrichment program. The very thing that most of us in Congress have said is they need to cease this idea. They need to cease their pursuit of a nuclear program. We didn't get concessions. The president said during the interview, said that in 13 to 15 years, Iran will have the ability to develop the necessary fissile material to develop a nuclear weapon, and there will be little to nothing the international community can do to stop Iran. I'm sorry, Mr. President, you will be out of office and you will not be able to utter anything but regret at that statement. Because in 10 to 15 years, if they have that capability, then the rest of the world has to deal with it. Where will you be, Mr. President? Private citizen. Not in a chance when you could actually do something. Stand up while you can. We learned through this interview that the goal of the current framework isn't to end Iran's ability to reach the capacity to build a nuclear weapon, but only to suspend their ability for a short time. In the framework the administration presented to the world, Iran's producing enough highly enriched uranium to build a bomb will only persist for 10 years. After 10 years, what sanctions will still be in place to bring Iran back to the negotiating table? The framework also doesn't sit well with our allies in the region. They have understandable concerns over the U.S. getting cozy with an Iranian regime that is becoming more influential. Apparently, the president feels that the U.S.-Israel relationship is a casual matter. When asked, should Iran recognize Israel's right to exist, the president responded with a smile. I'm sorry, as one who sat in this chamber just a few weeks ago and heard from Benjamin Netanyahu about the importance of this problem right now with Iran, I am not one that responds with a smile when it becomes on Israel's independence and right to exist. Until Iran acknowledges that, then nothing should be on the table. Israel should exist. It is our most important ally, and we should stand with them. And for the president not to realize that is a tragedy among American life. Iran has declared that Israel should be wiped off the face of the earth, and the president feels it is appropriate to smile about this? Excuse me, what is smiling about a country that wants to wipe off our most important ally? Israel is in the most precarious position when it comes to Iran developing a nuclear device. Iran has the ability to target Israel through the use of ballistic missile or on the ground or by one of its proxies, such as Hezbollah. The relationship between U.S. and Israel has been so close as to not allow a crack to form. The current P5+1 framework deal with Iran is causing fissures in what has always been an ironclad relationship. You see, I will continue to criticize a deal that puts Israel at risk and will fight to maintain Israel's qualitative military edge in the region. The JCPA shows why it is necessary for Congress to be involved in this process. It is the role of Congress to ensure, alongside the executive branch, that our national security and the safety of our allies are maintained. Until this administration realizes that there are some countries that unfortunately through their own actions choose to say we want to be outside the norm of relations, when they choose to say Israel should not exist, when they choose to continue to fund terrorism around the world, they should not be allowed a prestigious seat at the table to get to dictate terms. That is wrong. And until this administration realizes it, shame on this administration. If they continue to want to win public accolade for their diplomatic action, then unfortunately this administration is doing so on the backs of Israel. And I, for one, and I know many others here, will not stand for that. Mr. President, this is not a place to try and win points on the backs of our strongest ally. Listen to what the Prime Minister said. And when you listen, then you will understand this is a bad deal. It's time to walk away. With that, I yield back to my friend.
Well, thank